My wife slept with a delivery guy. After I opened our marriage for her, now she's begging to come back, but I've moved on. I've been married to my husband for 5 years, and we've been together for 7. For privacy, I'll refer to us as James and Skylar. We met during our second year of community college. I earned a 2-year degree in office management, while James went on to complete a 4-year degree in business administration through a university that offered remote courses on our community college campus. Fast forward to today, I'm 26. James is 27, and we had plans to start a family later this year. Our dream was to have 4 kids, ideally 2 boys and 2 girls. We had a really happy marriage, and both our families adored each of us. Now here's where I messed up, royally. I developed what some people call a work husband, except in my case it wasn't with a coworker. It was with a delivery driver from one of the big 3 delivery companies who regularly drops off packages at our office. For confidentiality, I'll call him Jaden. Jaden, 25 and single, had been delivering to our office for nearly 2 years. From the moment we met, there was a spark, not exactly romantic, but something magnetic. I felt drawn to him, and every time he made a delivery, we'd chat for at least 10 minutes. I always made sure I was at the front desk when it was time for his drop-off. One day, our usual small talk took a turn. Jaden said he had something personal to ask. He warned me it was very private and didn't want to offend me or risk damaging our casual rapport. I told him not to worry, that he could ask me anything. Then he said it. I feel a strong attraction to you, and I was wondering if you feel it too. I was taken aback by how bold he was, and honestly I felt a little embarrassed. After taking a second to gather my thoughts, I admitted the truth. I told him I did feel it too. Jaden then said that if I weren't married, he would have asked me out. I thanked him for the compliment, and that was the end of our talk. He left, and nothing more was said. The following week, our interactions became brief and awkward. I felt uneasy and guilty, like maybe I'd let things go too far. I couldn't shake the feeling. At home, things with James were great. Let me be very clear. I've always been completely satisfied with James, emotionally, physically, and as a life partner. I truly believed at the time that he would have said the same about me. He was everything I needed. But still, I foolishly started fantasizing about somehow keeping both my amazing husband and some sort of emotional or even romantic bond with Jaden. I later learned this kind of thinking has a name: being a cake eater. Curious, I began reading about polyamory and open marriages. At first, I thought the whole idea was absurd and kind of gross. I didn't seriously consider it. I also knew James would never agree to something like that, and even if he did, it could damage our marriage and possibly cause both our families to distance themselves from us. That was a risk I didn't want to take. Still, the idea lingered. My married life was going wonderfully, but I kept imagining what it might be like to explore a connection with Jaden. I ended up diving back into the topic and stumbled across a blog post titled, "It Doesn't Hurt to Ask." It was written by a woman who claimed to be in a thriving open marriage. She said she loved her husband deeply but also fell for a man she met while volunteering. She didn't know how to talk to her husband about it without ruining their relationship, so she kept it bottled up for over 2 years. Then, during a long road trip, she finally asked him how he felt about opening up their marriage. To her shock, he was open to it. Long story short, they gave it a try. Now, years later, they each have partners they see a few times a month. She claimed their marriage was stronger and happier than ever. Her story really stuck with me because it reflected exactly what I was feeling, but too afraid to admit. Then, one quiet Sunday morning, James and I were just lounging around the house, scrolling on our phones and chatting. That's when I decided to bring it up. "I just read this blog post about open marriages," I said casually. "What's your opinion on them?" He then asked if I was referring to couples sleeping with other people. I confirmed and asked again what he thought about it. He said he found it disgusting, and that if someone wanted to sleep around, they should just get divorced. I replied that open marriages were becoming increasingly common in the US and other Western countries. James's face twisted with clear disgust, so I quickly changed the subject. Based on his reaction, I decided I'd never bring it up again. The last thing I wanted was to jeopardize our great marriage. A couple of weeks passed. One night, James and I were cuddling in bed, totally in love after an amazing round of intimacy. I was lying on his chest and couldn't see his face. Out of nowhere, he asked, "Who did you have in mind when you brought up open marriages last week?" The question startled me and my stomach dropped. I slowly lifted my head, looked at him and asked, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" James explained that he had read some research suggesting that when a woman brings up the idea of an open relationship, it's often because she's already cheated or has someone else in mind. His revelation caught me off guard, completely rattled me in fact. He looked at me and said, "I know you too well. I can tell you're hiding something, so just be honest." I froze, looked away, and told him truthfully that I had never cheated on him and never would. I could have stopped there, but I didn't. I went on to confess that if we ever did explore an open marriage, there was someone at work I might consider. James asked, "Tell me about this work friend." So I began explaining my interactions with Jaden, what he had said to me and how our exchanges had gone up until that point. However, I didn't tell James that I had admitted reciprocating Jaden's feelings. James's response shook me. "You know, technically, you've already cheated on me." I immediately became defensive and insisted I hadn't, but he countered, "Yes, you have. What you have with this Jaden guy is what's called an emotional affair." I had never heard of that term before, so James explained it to me. As he talked, I grew more frustrated. Eventually, he suggested we drop the conversation for the night since he had to be up early the next day. He fell asleep quickly, but I couldn't. I picked up my phone and started researching emotional affairs. I read several articles and forum posts. James was right. What I had with Jaden wasn't just a harmless connection. It was dangerously close to an emotional affair. No, let me be honest. It was a full-blown emotional affair. I felt sick, like I'd deeply betrayed my husband. Unable to sleep, I went downstairs and made myself some tea. I eventually drifted off on the couch around 4 a.m. At about 6:45 a.m., James gently woke me with a kiss. He told me he was heading out for work, and reminded me it was almost 7. As always, I kissed him back and told him I loved him, this time putting even more meaning behind the words. I was drowning in guilt over my feelings for Jaden. Several days passed. Then one night, while we were lying in bed after making love, James suddenly said he'd be open to trying an open marriage, if that was really what I wanted. I was shocked and asked, "Why are you bringing this up now?" He explained that he had been thinking about our previous talks and felt that maybe we should try it while we were still young, if it was something we were curious about. I told him I was interested, but promised I'd never do anything to risk our love or marriage, because he meant the world to me. James replied, "If our love is strong, it'll survive infidelity." I pushed back, explaining that a mutual open relationship wouldn't be infidelity, it would be a shared agreement. But instead of responding directly, he simply said, "Consider our marriage open starting now." That stunned me again. I told him we needed to slow down and figure out some boundaries. He laid out his 3 rules. We must announce ahead of time who we plan to sleep with and when. We had to share details about the encounter afterward, but without going into anything graphic. Protection must be used, no exceptions. I agreed to those terms and added a couple of my own. We would keep our open marriage a secret from everyone. We would promise each other that no outside relationships would end our marriage, that we'd stay together no matter what. James said he couldn't agree to either of those conditions. When I asked him why, he simply stated he didn't and wouldn't accept those terms and didn't want to talk about it any further. That response made me uneasy. It was completely unlike him. Still, I cuddled up next to him, and we eventually fell asleep. Our conversations about opening the marriage left me feeling unsettled, like James had some hidden motive. So for the next month, I didn't act on the open relationship idea. Life went on as usual. During that time, I kept my distance from Jaden at work. We only exchanged small talk, weather updates, how busy we both were, nothing personal. Then one day, Jaden mentioned he missed our chats and asked what was going on. I told him I'd just been swamped with work and home responsibilities and didn't have time to talk lately. But in my mind, I was debating whether I should tell him about our now open marriage. That's when I made the decision, one I wish more than anything I could take back. It didn't seem right to talk about something so personal at work, so I invited him out for a drink after hours. He agreed. We met at a local bar with a cozy outdoor patio, perfect for the warm early spring evening. I told him everything about my now open marriage and asked straight up if he'd be interested in something more with me. He said yes immediately. He told me he'd been hoping I'd come around but had never pushed because he respected my situation. He even said he'd been dreaming about me for months, Most of our conversation that evening was full of flirting. Since it was a Tuesday, we agreed to meet the next day at his apartment for our first romantic encounter right after work. I made it clear that I'd have to leave by 6:30 p.m. to get home to my husband, who, no matter what, remained my top priority. That night I went home and made a lovely dinner for James. After we ate, I told him about meeting up with Jaden and our plans to meet again the next day. Provided James was still okay with the open marriage arrangement. I could tell James was surprised. He replied, "Oh, okay, so you're going to meet him tomorrow?" I confirmed, but reassured him we could still cancel it all. I emphasized again that he, and our marriage, came first. He said, "No, let's do this." We hugged, but his embrace felt stiff, distant, not like our usual warm, tight ones. I chalked it up to nerves. We didn't talk much that evening. He was busy working in his office, and I had my own tasks to wrap up. Later in bed I snuggled up to him and tried to initiate intimacy, but he told me he was too tired and needed to rest. The next morning I woke up to find James had already left. He'd sent me a text saying he had an early meeting that he forgot to mention, and that he'd see me later that night. That was a little out of the ordinary, but I didn't overthink it. I went about my morning routine, got dressed for work, and picked out an especially cute outfit, knowing I'd be seeing Jaden later. Throughout the day I texted James, but didn't hear back. Once again, I thought about canceling my meeting with Jaden, and honestly I wish I had. At 4:17 p.m., James finally replied. His message said he loved me and would see me that night. That text brought a sense of relief, and in my mind, it felt like a green light to move forward. So here it is. Jaden and I met up, and we had sex. It was great, different than what I have with James. Not as emotionally fulfilling, not as satisfying on a deeper level, but intense. It was driven by lust and the thrill of doing something forbidden. I stayed at his place for about an hour and a half, then headed home and got in just after 6:40 p.m. To my surprise, James wasn't back yet. That actually worked in my favor. It gave me time to shower and toss my clothes in the washing machine to get rid of Jaden's cologne. I didn't want James picking up on anything. Even though I was physically satisfied, emotionally I felt terrible, ashamed, guilty, and disgusted with myself. I felt dirty. It was like I was being pulled in two directions, caught in an internal war I couldn't escape. Trying to shake the guilt, I decided to cook a romantic dinner for James. I lit candles to create a warm, intimate mood, anything to remind him how much he still meant to me. I needed him to feel how deeply I loved him, and that whatever happened with Jaden meant nothing. It was purely physical, and couldn't even come close to the emotional and physical connection I had with James. I had hoped we'd end the night making love. Some of you may think that's selfish or even disgusting, but I want to be clear. I used protection for everything that happened with Jaden. There were no bodily fluids exchanged in any form. By 7:30 p.m., James still wasn't home. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted him, letting him know I was home and that dinner was ready. Still, no reply. At 8:50 p.m., I began to really worry. I kept calling, leaving voicemails and sending messages. Finally, at around 9:30, I got a brief text. "Don't wait up. I'll be home late." I texted back asking where he was and who he was with. No reply. I was drained and eventually fell asleep after midnight. I woke up to the sound of the shower running in the guest bathroom, something that was completely out of character for James. I got up to check and found the door locked. I knocked, but he didn't respond. About 10 minutes later, James came out wrapped in a towel and casually said, "Hey, how was your night?" I told him it was fine. Then, out of nowhere, he looked me in the eye and asked, "Did you sleep with Jaden?" I asked him not to use that phrase, but admitted yes, I had been with Jaden. Then I asked where he had been. He said he'd spent the night bar hopping and dancing. I pressed further, asking who he had been with. I could smell perfume on his discarded clothes and needed to know. When I asked, "Who is she?" he snapped that since he hadn't slept with her, he didn't need to tell me who she was. He then used the F word toward me, something he had never done before. That alone scared me. I asked why he had used the guest bathroom, and he told me he'd be sleeping in the guest room and using that bathroom until I completed 2 STD tests. His words shattered me. I said, "That wasn't part of our rules. I made sure Jaden used protection every time." He shot back, "Have you never heard of oral HPV or oral herpes? I'm not getting within 6 feet of you until you're cleared. Think of this as my version of social distancing." I was devastated, crying uncontrollably. I told James I wanted to end the open marriage. This wasn't what I had imagined. James coldly replied, "Too late. You had your turn. Now I'm going to have mine." I sobbed harder as he calmly stated he was going to bed because he had an early meeting and needed rest. I stayed on the couch crying into the cushions for hours, eventually falling asleep. When I woke up, James had already left. He'd sent a message. "Don't wait up for me." I tried calling. He didn't pick up. I texted and left voice messages all day but heard nothing back. I felt sick, like I was spiraling. I kept thinking, I've ruined my marriage. There were no deliveries scheduled that day, so I didn't see Jaden at work. At 4:30 p.m., I called him and asked if we could meet that evening. He agreed and said I sounded upset. I told him I was, but we'd talk about it at his place. When we met, I told him I wanted to end things. I admitted everything had been a terrible mistake. I loved my husband and wanted to fix what I had destroyed. I explained the entire situation, and Jaden understood. But then he made a request. He asked for one last hookup, and after that, he said he'd never contact me again outside of work. I agreed. We had a very brief, emotionless encounter. Nothing but basic, quick sex that lasted under 10 minutes. Afterward, he looked at me and said flatly, "That was terrible. You just laid there like a tree trunk." I apologized, telling him this entire situation had been a massive mistake and that it wasn't his fault. I got dressed, gave him one final hug, and turned to leave. Before I walked out, Jaden said, "I'll never understand women like you." I asked what he meant, and he replied, "Nothing, no comment," with a look of complete disgust on his face. I left in tears, crying the whole drive home. How could I have been so stupid? I destroyed my marriage. For what? For nothing. I felt like the dumbest person alive, and once again, I just felt dirty. James didn't come home until 1 a.m. that night, sick to my stomach, knowing I had single-handedly destroyed my life. On Friday, James did the same thing. He left before I woke up and sent a cold message. "Don't wait up for me." His distance was unbearable. I used to cherish our mornings, evenings, and weekends together, making him meals, cuddling, taking walks after dinner, and laughing about silly things. Now all of it was gone. I missed him so much it physically hurt. I texted James, saying I wanted to talk the next morning. He replied that it was fine as long as it was first thing, since he was leaving for the day. I asked where he was going, but he didn't respond. He didn't get home until 1:30 a.m. again. I didn't say anything. I just lay there in bed, crying quietly. Like the night before, he showered in the guest bathroom and went straight to bed without a word. I woke up early and waited for him. At 7 a.m., he walked into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of orange juice. He didn't even look at me. His energy was cold, detached. He sat at the table, eyes glued to his phone, completely silent. I walked over, plopped onto his lap, and softly said, "Look at me." He turned away, but I gently cupped his face and made him look into my eyes. "I love you with all my heart," I told him. "What I did, it wasn't a mistake. It was a bad decision. But I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to earn back your trust and love." He just stared at me blankly like I was insane. "Do you still love me?" I asked. He didn't answer. "James, please," I begged. He finally said, "I don't know." I burst into tears. "I can fix this. I can make it right." He looked at me with cold detachment and replied, "I don't think you can." That's when I snapped. I called him a bastard and accused him of setting me up just so he could divorce me. He denied it, but admitted that the moment I brought up the idea of an open marriage, he knew things were likely over. That's what everything he'd read suggested. I asked, "Then why didn't you just shut me down? Why didn't you tell me to cut off all contact with Jaden?" His reply crushed me. "You can't force someone to be faithful. You either are or you aren't, and clearly you're not a monogamous person." I sobbed harder. "I am. Please don't throw us away." He didn't say a word. He just stood up and said he was leaving. I asked where he was going. He said he wouldn't be back until after midnight. Through tears, I reminded him that tomorrow was Easter Sunday, and we were supposed to leave early to visit my parents. At 7 a.m., like always. My family adores James. We spend nearly every holiday with them, especially since his parents moved to Florida. He coldly responded, "I'm not going." Shocked, I pleaded, "Please come with me." He flatly said, "No." "Then what am I supposed to tell my parents?" I asked. "I don't care," he said. "Tell them the truth." I begged him to stay, to just be with me, but he ignored my tears, got dressed, packed a gym bag, and walked out. I felt absolutely destroyed, completely deflated. I'm sharing this here in the hope that someone might have advice. Anything I can do to save my marriage. Have any of you experienced something like this with open relationships? Is there a way to rebuild after a betrayal like this? I'd really appreciate hearing from people who've actually reconciled after going through something similar. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. I'm going back to bed now to cry for the rest of the day. I wanted to give everyone an update. First, thank you to those who offered support. It truly helped me through the past few days. Many of you criticized me, and I accept that. I deserved it. Your honesty, even the harsh words, gave me perspective. Easter Sunday and today have been two of the hardest days of my life. I made the drive to my parents' house alone. As soon as I arrived, the first thing they asked was, "Where's James?" I lied and told them he had a work emergency and couldn't come. I didn't want to ruin the family gathering. They seemed to believe me at first, but grew suspicious as the day went on. I wasn't texting or calling James like I normally would, and I could feel their concern rising. To cover my tracks, I faked a few texts and pretended everything was fine. I even told people James had messaged me, said he was stuck at the office and would call tomorrow. But the truth? He never called. He didn't even text to see if I got home safe. That silence broke me. I had planned to stay over at my parents' house and tell them about our marital issues on Monday. I dreaded it. I knew they'd be furious. And I was right. This morning, I told them everything. It went exactly as I feared. They yelled. They called me terrible names. They said they didn't raise me like this and hurled painful accusations. Then they called my sister to join in, and she let me have it too. I cried and told them how sorry I was. I admitted I'd made a horrible decision and that I've learned from it. I promised I'd never make such a mistake again. I told them my only focus now is to win back James's love and trust. By the end of it, though they were still deeply disappointed in me, they said they loved me and that they would be praying for our marriage to heal. I drove home Monday evening. I had called and texted James throughout the day but got no reply. When I walked through the door, I found a note on the counter. He had gone to Florida to visit his parents. He'd be back on Sunday. I felt awful. We had been planning to visit them together in early May. Now, because of me, that plan was ruined. I hate myself. That's all I have to say right now. I'm just really sad and deeply depressed. What scares me is, I'm not even crying anymore. The pain, the regret, it settled so deep inside me now tears feel pointless. It's been almost a year. I hadn't planned to post again, but so many of you reached out with support or asked for an update. I figured I'd share. There's bad news, and, surprisingly, some good news. The bad news, I'm divorced. It was finalized back in December. In the end, James said he just couldn't remain married to me after what happened. He told me he would never be able to fully trust me again. Worse, he admitted he felt embarrassed being seen in public with me. He said the divorce gave him back his sense of masculinity. I don't agree. He never lost it. No one even knows about what happened with Jaden except for our families. But, whatever, that's how he feels. Now the good news. No, the great news. James and I started dating again last month. We got back together on Valentine's Day, and it's been incredible. We only see each other when he wants, which has been about once a week, but our chemistry is electric. It's actually way more intense than it was even during our early days, 7 years ago. He's made it very clear. This is only physical. We will never be married again. We'll never live together. We won't be a couple. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Well, not really. But I'll take what I can get. My goal is still to win him back fully. And if I can't, then I want to have his babies. Don't get the wrong idea. I would never baby trap him. That's not who I am. But I've thought long and hard about it. If there's a way we could have kids and share custody without being married, I'd do it. I know it sounds crazy, but I love this man. I don't want children with anyone else. Yes, I know it would probably ruin any future relationship I might try to have with another man, but the thing is, I don't want anyone else. I only want James. That's all I have to say for now. I probably won't post again unless something major happens, but I'd really love your thoughts. Do you think I'm crazy for dating James again? Should I move on, find someone new, and start a family with a person who actually wants a future with me? Because right now, I'm stuck between hope and heartbreak. P.S. Jaden is not an option. He never was. He was a mistake, a very bad decision I will never repeat. Thank you for reading.